Hello and welcome to 209 Prep Sports Media. We will utilize this podcast and various social media sites to share information, highlight weekly matchups, promote the talent of the 209, and most of all, create a platform for our athletes. In an era dominated by social media and internet, we've also lost print media and the writers who love writing about prep sports. Some of them have their own social media accounts where they freelance and cover sports. Some are writing for a few newspapers still covering prep sports. And we hope to have some of these writers on as weekly guests to share their insights, thoughts, and ideals about the various hot topics of the week. Hello, and welcome back to 209 Prep Sports. Today, I'm going to be in studio by myself. Scott has a previous engagement, but I thought it was important that we talked about where things stand today. There was some pretty good news happened last Friday, which allows the return to play. So obviously there's some caveats, there's some hurdles that have to be cleared in our surrounding counties. First and foremost, whether you're in the red or purple tier, you have to be sub 14 per 100,000 cases, positive cases. So what that means is that as currently, San Joaquin County is at 17.1. But the previous week, I believe it was about 22.4, 22.5. So we dropped about 5 per 100,000 in a week. The last couple of days, the numbers have looked really, really good. So I think most are anticipating that we'll reach that 14 per 100,000 in the next by next Tuesday, which is really, really exciting. You know, unfortunately for some of the sports, we're still having some issues, basketball, volleyball, wrestling. As of now, it's not likely that they play, simply because they have to be in such a low category that it puts them in a position where it more than likely won't happen this season. So unless there's a movement to get those sports moved to a different tier or change the tier system in general or something along those lines for those particular sports, I won't say it won't happen, but it's probably very unlikely that it will happen. So some exciting things that have already happened. Obviously, there have been cross-country meets, swim meets, golf matches. I believe there have been some tennis matches as well. So that's really exciting. I've been able to see a couple. Actually, we had a cross country meet out in Linden last week, so that was pretty neat to see the kids be able to return. I was speaking to my daughter the other day, and she mentioned that March 13th is actually 1 year that we will have been shut down. So almost a year to the date, we're back to some sports being allowed to participate and compete against each other. So it's very, very exciting. For our kids and for our communities and for our schools in general. So, you know, the getting through this pandemic and where things have stood, you know, a couple of months ago, and seeing the success we're having with the counties and the state in general, with the numbers lessening daily. So obviously the vaccinations are helping, and you know, we've had a lot of positive testing, and then, you know, some of the just masking and those types of things have really, really helped the numbers. So that's really, really good for the society in general, but actually, you know, for our sports, it helps us quite a bit. So that's kind of where things stand as of today. So it's to a point now where a lot of these schools are actually able to start scheduling sports. So I've noticed there are quite a few games already scheduled for football, which is really good. I know that St. Mary's is scheduled to play De La Salle their first game, and according to Max Preps, there are some games already being scheduled too. So you know, I won't go through the list, but it looks like there's about 8 or 10 schools have games scheduled for the first week that'll be allowed. So I would anticipate the entire section that are able to, you know, field the team and things like that. I would anticipate those most schools having their game scheduled, because it's going to be a very very short time frame where the games are going to need to be completed by. So, if we were to be in the positive or in the right number by Tuesday, it basically positions us in a way that I believe March 19th would be the first competition date. Now, I know that some counties are already outside of that, and I think that will allow some schools to participate in other counties at that the week prior. So, I think as of today that there have been some games scheduled for that the night of March 12th and the day of March 13th. So, again, very exciting for everybody involved. It was a concerted effort across a bunch of different factions that made this happen. You had multiple groups really doing a lot of legwork and a lot of gathering a lot of data and sharing that data with the powers that be that positioned our kids in a way that they would actually be able to have some type of a season this year in the majority of sports. And again, I've seen quite a bit of stuff on Twitter and just in general, people being upset, that volleyball and basketball and wrestling haven't been able to be added to this restructured tiering. And it's unfortunate. I don't necessarily agree with it. I understand it. I think that there's going to be quite a few more hurdles that need to be cleared in general, just I think for any of this to happen. So, you talk about are fans going to be allowed? I would imagine that they're going to have to at least allow parents because, your mass transportation is not going to be a viable solution because they're going to not, put 50 or 60 kids on a bus and then just ship them. So the kids are going to have to get to the game somehow, some way. So, we're by far, we're not out of the woods, but I think that we're kind of getting in a position that at least we have an idea of what it's going to look like, and what we're going to need to do to get there. And more than anything, I think no matter what this ends up being or how this season looks, whether it's 4 games for football and 20 games for baseball and 6 track meets and 4 swim meets, whatever it ends up being, I think it's time for us to be grateful, that we're healthy and, that our kids are allowed to return to the things that they love the most in life. And, that social aspect of sports, is returning. So, so hopefully we'll see some of the kids get to be back to being kids again. It's this whole, the whole pandemic has really thrown a lot of kids for a loop, and trying to get them to help understand how serious this is along with, trying to maintain some type of structure and some type of, just direction in their lives, because, when you don't have something that you've always had, you kind of get thrown off what's really important. And so we've seen that quite a bit, across the board with, I'm sure a lot of us are empathetic to, other people's situations, and, so you've seen it with your friends if you haven't seen it directly. So I've seen it both ways, and it's been tough. This last year has been very, very tough. We've gone through illness and, just, losing touch with some of these kids because for one reason or another. So, the, exciting thing is that it looks like we're going to return to some normalcy and get some games in, and hopefully that's just a stepping stone to next season, and positioning our kids in a way that next season will go off without a hitch, and we'll have a much more normal year with homecomings and things like that again. So that's kind of where we're at. The other thing is that there's some other hurdles that you're going to have. They're going to require for the contact sports like water polo and football. They're going to require mandatory weekly testing. So I'm sure you're going to have kids missing for positive tests. You're going to probably maybe have games canceled, or probably have to be canceled because there's not going to be a makeup date allowed. So canceled due to COVID testing because of contact tracing. If one kid tests positive and they're in contact with X amount of kids, it could shut down the team for that week or 10 days or whatever the period may be. So by far, or we're not out of the woods, but we are at least getting to a point where we have some ideas about the direction things are going to go. If we get into that 14 case, it drops San Joaquin County into the red tier next week, which opens up baseball, field hockey, girls lacrosse, and softball. And those games are going to be getting started, in the next. The first contest date would actually be allowed on February 1st, but that's not going to likely happen. I think that I've read that most schools are going to start mid-April with their games. They'll start practicing relatively quickly, but they'll start with their games in mid-April. So that's good. You'll have track and field, and then soccer opens up in the orange. This was as of January 22nd, but soccer will open up like football would be able to open up once you get to the 14 cases. So the spring's going to be inundated with a bunch of sporting events. I know that I've talked to some of the college coaches around, and they're having some issues with all the sports happening at the same time, and just coordinating that. So I think patience is going to be important for all of us, just be patient with the structures and understand that it's not a normal season. And, everybody's trying to move mountains, in a relatively short amount of time. So there's going to be things that slip through the cracks, and, keeping a positive mindset and understanding that this is a different situation. And this is about it's always about the kids when you're playing youth sports, but this isn't about winning and losing, because, the kids have already lost out on a lot, and now it's time for all of us to win a little bit and get these kids, back to being athletes and student athletes, and hopefully not too long after that we'll get band and those types of things back on the field, and just make it a normal prep experience for these kids. So there's a lot of good things happening across the state. Like I mentioned, you have counties, some of the counties, just highlighting the ones that have reached the threshold. You have San Francisco and Mariposa County. Calaveras County has already reached the threshold, as well as Alameda, Placer and Butte, Tuolumne County, Amador County, Contra Costa. So all of those are relatively close to us. We touched some of those, and those are already cleared to start sports or start football. And the ones that are above the mark, you have Sutter County at 14.7. You have Sacramento County at 15.3. San Joaquin County at 17.1. Tulare at 18.4. Stanislaus at 20.8. So some of these counties have some work to do. Like I mentioned before, I know San Joaquin County was at 22.5 or so, and now they're down to 17.1. So it's very likely that we can move that next 3 per 100,000 in the next week. So that would be great for the kids and the ability to get games started. So those are all good news. You have some state across the state. There's some things that are happening that are kind of difficult. I know that the teachers union is in LA. UTLA is having a vote because they're upset about a premature return to schools. So they're suggesting that the teachers union in LA is suggesting that they don't have any return to school until they're out below the purple tier. Vaccinations are made available to educators, and safety protocols are in place, including PPE, social distancing, ventilation, and cleaning regimen. So some of these bigger school districts are going to have some issues that are out that don't have anything to do with the kids, that are just have to do with this current situation. And so again, like I mentioned a little while ago, we have some hurdles to clear. We're not by no stretch of the imagination are we out of the woods, and it's just like a free for all. So I know that there's, the next point of contention with most people will probably be whether, fans are allowed or not. That's going to be an issue because, parents are going to want to see their kids play, and they should, rightfully so. I mean, kids should, that's what, all of us as parents and even as kids, our parents took us to all of our games and, paid for everything and got us coaching and all the stuff that we needed. Those experiences for the parents are just as important to them as they are to the kids. So The difference being is that as an adult, you can rationalize a little bit better than you can as a child. So, but those are also going to be things that are going to come up. Travel is going to be an issue. How are we going to get, so many kids to games and things like that? So, like I mentioned, we're not out of the woods on this, but it's exciting that we're able to have these conversations now, so, we started this podcast with the intent of, showcasing and the kids in the prep athletes in the area, sharing their stories, those that are fortunate enough to play, beyond high school, we like to share those stories and highlight those. We're working on a website now, so hopefully there'll be a landing page for the things like that, because it's very difficult to put and highlight a kid, what they've been able to achieve and audio, through audio. So sometimes having that visual aspect and having a landing page like so that we will with Prep Sports 209, it will give us a place to share information. It'll give us a place to post articles and things like that. So it'll be a local media outlet, focused 100% on the preps in the area. So really exciting for that. Really exciting things for us as well. This was started because we really care about where things are going and giving these kids that highlight, or that time to highlight them and what they've accomplished throughout their lives. So, as we move on and through this spring, it's going to, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, it's going to be very, very fast paced. I mean, we're going to have a lot of sports on a daily basis. So, obviously things are going to get missed. We're going to try to highlight things as much as possible. It's going to be very difficult. There's only 2 of us on staff, and then we have Jake Peters doing the production on the podcast. But the 2 people that are, Scott and myself, were really it'll be very difficult for us to get to everything. So we're working on building those relationships with athletic directors and coaches and things and the like, so we can get that information and share it, readily with our listening audience, and as well as people that will look into our website and things like that. So, some of the exciting things that are going to happen as far as contests are involved. You have St. Mary's is going to go out to De La Salle. De La Salle is one of the premier programs in the country, on a regular basis. And so St. Mary's of Stockton will get to go out and compete against De La Salle at De La Salle. I know St. Mary's has played them before. So, and St. Mary's does well and holds their own. I know that we have some Escalon and Ripon Christian were our new members of the VOL. So that's pretty interesting, because you might have some matchups like Escalon and Manteca, or Ripon and Oakdale, and so those, Ripon and Escalon being some of the premier football teams around the area, it's exciting for them to get to play at a couple of divisions up. So that will be interesting to see how things like that play out, and then to get to see some of these kids that are getting a lot of attention across the country due to camps and things like that. The Jonah Colemans at Lincoln and Kenyon. You have Kenyon over at Lincoln as well, and then you have a couple of kids at St. Mary's, a couple of kids at Edison, a couple of kids at Stagg. So there's kids across the area that are getting some offers, and then you have baseball season and softball season right around the corner with a bunch of early commits that will get to play out their senior year. Since last year was, their junior years were pretty much taken from them due to the pandemic. So getting to see, some of these kids like Hannah Ortega at Linden get to pitch this year as her last year before she goes to Bethune-Cookman. I know Ben Gaff will get to play his senior year before he heads off to Idaho, I think that is. And then you have some other kids, that have committed. So and getting to play their sports and get their seasons in, as well as track and field and tennis. And we already mentioned track and field, like Mia Bryant, getting to get her some track competition in before she leaves for Penn State. So it's pretty exciting. Like I said, we're going. Everything's starting to go the right direction. I know there's going to be a lot on everybody's plate. So it's going to be, the primary focus for all of us should be that the kids are getting to play and not worry about the surrounding factors. Again, it's going to be the lack of fans and how we're going to get kids for transportation wise. And, I don't believe there's going to be any locker rooms or things like that. So the kids are going to, how and where they're going to change. They're going to have to probably be in like an open gym so they can change and get into their equipment so they can go play their games and things like that. But, we're going to have to work within the parameters of what the requirements are going to be. And we're going to have to be, conscientious to the fact that it's bigger than, us. It's bigger than one person. It's bigger than our own personal feelings. It's about the kids, and it's about the kids as a whole. You have a lot of things that have been taken from them this last year, and not to no fault of anybody's. It is what it is, and that's the way life works sometimes. But now that we're able to kind of get back into some sort of normalcy and get them some sort of normalcy and give them some type of their life back, let's not make it about anything other than them. We have a lot of schools are struggling with having facilities, proper facilities for kids to get things done. I know in Linden they've had some issues with tennis courts and things like that because the places they've rented out in the past are not open or what have you. And then you have I know Franklin is in the middle of a big rebuild with their whole football stadium, baseball fields, and all that. So finding practice areas and things like that are also an issue. I know Edison has an indoor swimming pool. Indoor sports are not allowed right now, so that's kind of halted their ability to compete. So there's just a lot of things that we don't think about on a regular basis or a normal basis that that we kind of have to take into consideration this year. It's just going to be way different than we've ever known, and we can make it as good of an experience as we want it to be, or we can make it as difficult as an experience we want it to be. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what we think personally. We just got to do what's best for everybody. So, so that's kind of where things stand now. Like I said, it's exciting to see that, some things that are going on. There's, one of the great things that'll happen this year, and I think it probably will be televised, is that Mater Dei will play St. John's Bosco, which, on any other given year could easily be a state championship type of a game or a bowl game, or, it's like the two of the powerhouses in the country are going to get to play each other. And so, we have one of Stockton's own, Raleigh Brown, who recently committed to Oklahoma, who left Edison and went down to Mater Dei to play. He'll be featured in that game. And so it's, there's going to be some pretty neat stuff that happens playing football in the spring and playing, in conjunction with other sports. Is going to be difficult, but it's also going to be kind of neat and kind of different. Sometimes you have to look at why we're doing stuff and, try to take the good out of things and not try to focus on the negative and the bad. So, with that being said, there's still some things that are being decided as well, as far as how kids are going to be allowed to participate. So if they're going to be able to play football in another sport or soccer in another sport, or what that may look like, the CIF has cleared that to happen. So we're just not sure, how that's going to work out. And every district is a little bit different. Every league is different. And all the counties are different on how they're willing to handle certain things. So, some of the leagues are only allowing intra-league competition. So they're not allowing their schools to participate outside of the league. Some of the schools are only allowing schools within the county to play each other, even though you're allowed to play a school from a different county that touches your county. So there's there's not going to be a hard and fast rule, I don't think. I do think we're going to have some issues with a lot of schools being able to field varsity and JV level teams. Since we're not out of this, I know a lot of kids are still not attending school in person. And so maybe their families aren't comfortable with them playing, or whatever the situation may be. So again, we're, on a regular basis, you'd like to see kids participating at both the JV and varsity level, if not even the freshman level as well. That just keeps more kids involved, more kids engaged, more kids having a healthy outlet for energy and keeping them focused on the things that are important, like getting good grades and being good people and things like that. So, there's going to be, it's not perfect. It's not the way that I think anybody anticipated this to be, but we're going to have to make do with what we can. So, as we get into this season, Scott and I will we're going to try to spend the next couple of weeks getting out and meeting with some coaches and maybe some athletic directors and speaking to some players and getting some audio sound bites from those players and those coaches and those athletic directors, and continue to monitor the situation and how things are going. We're going to share all of the highlight games of the week and things like that across all sports. That's what we tried to get this thing started. It's going to be difficult to run a podcast that's prep sports oriented when you have 30 sports or 15, 20 sports competing at the same time. So there will never be any intentional sport or game overlooked. It's just going to be hard to manage all of those. We only do a 45-minute podcast on Thursdays, and it's to get all of that content in that short period of time, will be somewhat difficult. Like I said, we're creating a website to share, to have another outlet or another resource for our listeners, so they have a place to see some of the things that we're trying to share and things that we're not able to share online or on air. Not that we can't, it's just that we just don't have time. So it's exciting to get to think about, some of these rivalries get to play each other again. So hopefully we get to see those Tracy West games and Ripon Escalon type of games, and you get to see St. Mary's and Lincoln play each other, and Lodi and Tokay. And across all sports, it's, you have, in softball, you have Ripon and Escalon are both perennially, they're both very, very good teams. So to get to see them compete against each other is pretty exciting. They have some very good swim schools. I know that Lodi and St. Mary's and some of those schools in Stockton have very good swim programs. So getting to see kids compete at those levels, and then track and field coming around. This is a very good. The San Joaquin Valley is a hotbed for track athletes and athletes in general. And then we will hopefully at some point we'll be able to cover some soccer games and things like that. So as this we have some fluidity in the movements of what happens with this the return to play. We're going to try to keep everybody informed as best as possible. Like I said, next week we'll try to get more along the lines of addressing, because hopefully by next week we'll have more games that we can actually discuss. So the way I understand it is that the fall sports, so you have, and I think even soccer maybe beginning mid-March. So those would start ahead of some of the spring sports like track and golf. Well, there's golf's already participating, but track and baseball and softball and maybe even soccer. I don't know. I'm not sure. Oh, and swimming's already started as well. So, because those are some purple tiered sports that have been allowed to play. So, the next thing that we'll be talking about next week will hopefully be actual contests. And we'll probably try to get a hold of a couple of coaches throughout the week and just get their perspective on how things are changing and what the protocols may be, and give people a better understanding of how much work's really being done, because it seems like there's been a lot of time people sitting around not doing a whole lot and just hoping for something to happen, when in reality there's been a lot of people that have been working really hard at getting us into this position, and I don't think we can thank some of those people enough for their efforts that are being put forth. I know that there's been the Let 'em Play faction and the Coaches Association, California Coaches Association, as well as there were a couple of groups that got together in San Diego and actually filed a filed a lawsuit against the state of California to allow the kids to return to play, and the judge granted that lawsuit. And so now that group is aligning with some other groups and getting some lawyers on retention to position their counties in the same way to allow the kids to return. Fortunately for us, in Linden, we have a great support staff. We have, an athletic director that works really hard to make sure this works for everybody. And I think in general, most schools are that way. I think most schools are really looking forward to this opportunity and are willing to, jump through as many hoops as possible, or to make this happen for our kids. So, normalcy will help heal the mind and heal the soul, and getting the kids back to having getting back in the sunshine and competing and be getting back into better physical shape and things like that will also help their mental aspect and their mental attitude towards life in general. So it's really we're it's probably way overdue. We probably didn't need to be in this situation, but we are. We can always look back and hindsight's 20/20, and we can always look back and say, oh, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But where we're at this point in our lives, I think let's be grateful for what we have. Let's keep working towards doing the right thing. Make sure the kids are social distancing and washing their hands and using their own water bottles and things like that, so we don't have these outbreaks that will impair their opportunity to play a contest or a game or what have you. So, and then as we do get into games, our intent is to to obviously highlight those weeks standouts for the week, and inevitably somebody will get left off and somebody's going to get upset with us, and there's never a malice towards a child. We started this, on our own. We don't have sponsorships or any of that. We're doing this because, we saw that there was a need, there was a void, and for us, it was this. We've mentioned it multiple times that we grew up in an area of print media where it was really exciting for us to wake up on the weekends and just take a look at stats or the player of the week or whatever that may be, and that's kind of the model that we're using. It's obviously it's a different medium. We're not using print media, but we're using a podcast, which is podcasts weren't even around back in the day. You had radio or you had TV and you had print media. And now you have anybody can do a podcast. So obviously, because we're doing one, but that's pretty much the information that we have for the week. There's been a lot has happened in the last week, and it's a very fluid situation. So we're not, nothing is definitive at this point. We don't, there's a lot of teams that have scheduled March 12th games. There's teams that have scheduled March 13th games. Whether those games happen that day or not, I don't think anybody's 100% sure yet. I think, again, there's a lot of things that need to be set up. Every school is going to have to set up how they're going to do their testing for football. We're talking about football and water polo with testing. But then you're going to have to worry about, transportation, and we're going to have to get, officials and things like that. So and I think, to my understanding, that most of these leagues and most of these competitions, there's going to be scores kept and things like that, but there's no league title, there's no section title, there's no section championship, so it's really going to be just kids going out and playing sports, and it's not that that's a good or a bad thing. It's just different than we're used to. And I think, for what happens this spring will be, I anticipate that there'll be a lot more camaraderie. That kids will appreciate the opportunity much more than they have in the past. Not that they haven't, but I think it'll just be even that much more, exciting to them, and that much more. I think they'll be more appreciative of their situations because of what they've had to endure over this last year. It's been tough. It's been tough on all of us, and just having this come about, in the last, 4 or 5 days, with a very short window for things to happen. I think being grateful and thanking those that are working so hard behind the scenes to make sure the kids are getting this done. For Linden to be able to put together a cross-country meet in basically a couple of weeks. And other schools are doing it as well. I'm just familiar with Linden. So for those ADs to be able to pull that off, and, kudos to you. Kudos to all the schools that are able to get these kids, back out and competing with each other and having the opportunity to flourish in that environment. I think it's paramount, and it doesn't have all the rest of it is just, it's not what's the most important thing. The most important thing is the kids and their health, their mental and physical health, and making sure that they're positioning themselves in a way that they can be successful in their future. So I'm going to wrap it up at this point. I've kind of just rambled on, but I've tried to share as much information as I could this week. I think it's very, very important that we just maintain focus, and we understand that there's a lot of things that are going to be outside of our ability to control. So when that happens, we're going to have to be a lot more patient than we have been in the past. So it's again a super exciting time. Hopefully next week it'll be more directed around what competitions are going to be coming up. We can cover some of the competitions and some of the results for those weeks and things like that. So just wanted to thank, again, I don't do this enough, but I want to thank Jake Peters for the production. He does a phenomenal job. Jake actually will probably be expanding his production at some point. So I'll share that down the line for anybody interested in doing a podcast. We have a producer and a studio, so and rented at a very favorable rate at some point. So thank you guys for listening. Looking forward to a great spring, and hopefully just being able to cover youth sports or prep sports in general. So have a great day. Talk to you next week.